Welcome back to the First Responder Wellness Podcast, where we believe that wellness is not optional. And if you want to serve at your best, you must focus on you first. It's so true. It's true in my life. It's true in your life. If you want to be at your best, start focusing inward, focus on you. Today, we're going to talk about that with April Chavez. She is a former deputy sheriff who now helps others live more intentionally and align with who they truly are. We talk about building habits, going inward, and how even small steps can create big shifts. Hey, thanks for being here. Let's dive in. Well, April, welcome to the First Responder Wellness Podcast. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Conrad, it's an absolute pleasure to be here on this platform today with you.
So tell me a little bit about who you are. What do you do, and how are you connected to first responders?
So I am previous law enforcement. I was a deputy sheriff in the rugged mountains of Colorado.
Oh, wow.
And yes. So very little to no backup the majority of the time. And because it was so lacking in staff in all facets, we did a lot of covering for all of the other different buckets of fields. So it was an incredible experience for me. And so all of the things in the ways that I show up in the world today is based on a lot of my experience. It's based on safety. It's based on, awareness, getting the big picture, all of those things. And so it really shines brightly often in all of the ways that I show up. So how do I show up today? Well, I am a CEO of my own business. I became an entrepreneur. And when I decided that law enforcement, that wasn't the course that I was going in life any longer, what was I going to do? And how would I be able to continue serving? Because why do we all go into those fields? Well, usually it's because we have this innate desire to serve others, to be a hero in some facet or some regard. We start to see things in life, in childhood, of what really makes up who we are, energetically, spiritually, right? And why we choose to go into the fields and do the things that we do. And how do we align ourselves to be that brightness in the world? But that's kind of an essence of where I start to see the puzzle starts to come together and align. And there's a lot of other reasons why I chose to go into law enforcement, but the business that I do now is education. That's what I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about educating people on how to be their best selves. It's self-improvement. It's continuous development, because I have this strong belief that when we work on ourselves and we change ourselves, that changes the world.
Wow, we have a lot to unpack here, and I love what you are focusing on, because I'm kind of in the middle of that focus for myself and looking at my life. I mean, I'm not getting any younger, and I'm okay. Am I who I'm supposed to be? Am I doing what I'm supposed to do? And I think that for many of us, that is a lifelong quest.
Absolutely.
I have to say though, my wife, she decided early on that she was going to be an educator, and she has followed that track, and she's moved, from one place to another. And now she's a principal at a middle school. And so she's looking at her final years doing that. But she's always had that focus of, this is who I am. I'm an educator. For me, I'm kind of the artist type. I dabbled in this and dabbled in that. And so now it's like, am I really doing what I'm supposed to be doing? And I'm even right now, even as we speak, I'm kind of in this junction of, okay, I had this documentary that came out. It only has legs for so long. How long can I ride that before I need to move on to the next thing? And so how do we find those things? Do we do a lot of introspection? How do we find, who we really are supposed to be?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's definitely that introspection aspect. It's always going within the intuition of us and really quieting ourselves down long enough to have that understanding of ourselves. It's that self-reflection. We as first responders start to learn that maybe in a different light, but we have to have an understanding of that in order to respond when things happen, when things are happening so rapidly and it's very, very dangerous. We have to think very quickly, and we have to respond very quickly. We don't rise to the level of our courage. We fall to the level of our training, right? So we have to train ourselves consistently of our movements. How are we going to move? What do we need to do? Where are our tools? Where are our resources? How do we respond to someone in order to get the information that we need in order to calm down a situation, right? And so it's how do we do that internally as well? So we have to calm our bodies down, lower that heart rate so we can function, because we naturally respond in that fight or flight. So we learn that as first responders early on, but then when we start coming to the points in our life where we realize that we need to work on ourselves, where we are so lost. An interesting way to look at this is I responded very, very well as an officer. And I was able to execute very swiftly, handle things on my own. I handled felony stops on my own, all of those things. And I was great at it, right? But when it came to my personal life and my children specifically, it was difficult for me to be able to respond more effectively. My emotions were out of sorts. And so I think a lot of us come into that. Many, many, many of us, we are able to perform our job well if we're, having to showcase ourselves in front of our boss or in front of the public eye. We can handle that. And then internally, when it's inside the house, the people that we know closest, they get to see another side of us. Or we just feel so relaxed maybe that we feel like we can just be, and maybe a more negative side of ourselves. I don't know, but we also learn some of those things. And now we need to go within. What's happening? Why am I responding that way? Why am I not able to hone in on this specific time period in my life or situation in my life? And we start understanding, okay, now I can quiet myself and listen to my body. What's happening? Where do I feel the imbalance, so to speak? And what can I do to start making changes now that we have this information and knowledge?
I was editing another podcast interview just before we got on here, and we were talking there about how so many first responders turn into something that they're not, that they don't see themselves as, and we use the term asshole. They become an asshole. But many don't know why. Why am I acting this way? Why am I responding this way? Why is it that other people are seeing me in a negative light, because my behavior has changed? Do you have any insights into that?
Oh my gosh, I have so many stories. It's so funny that you say that. Well, it took me many years, I say, to really become or enhance the feminine aspect of myself after being in that field. We are trained to respond that way because that's how we protect ourselves and others. And so you have to put on, it's like putting on the armor, right? You put on the badge, the uniform, the cape before you go into, your day. And so you are a different person because you have to be a different person. And that's okay. It's the ones who are able to learn about that aspect of themselves and able to gracefully merge it into the loving, compassionate piece of themselves. So it takes time, it takes experience, it takes training, a lot of experience with different situations on how to merge that. And it's in the way that we communicate with others. right? And the more that we are able to gracefully communicate with others, usually the outcome is much, much better. So again, it's learning to tap into all of those different aspects at the right time. When I had left law enforcement, I just got, just to keep going before I applied to the next agency, I took a position in an office. I was an office manager for a realtor or something. I
Hmm.
can't recall. It's been a
That's quite a
while.
bit different from law enforcement.
It's very different, and it's funny. So as they put me in a position of leadership, so to
Hmm.
speak, because I had that. But I was also the first one to answer the phones.
Hmm.
And they had to pull me aside and say, April, I don't know if you can we might not have you answer the phones any longer because you're scaring the customers. Because I was so direct.
Mm.
I was like, let's get, to the
Mhm.
bottom line, how can I help you? What can we do? And I didn't have that. I wasn't graceful with that compassionate aspect of myself yet.
Mm.
And so, like I said, you just kind of have to flow through life, have a few different experiences. And many people who step into those fields are young. And if
Mhm.
you think about it, our brains aren't fully developed until
Mhm.
what, 25? I
Right.
don't know. Or like maybe they keep moving that up. It's just that we have to have life experience in order to really understand, okay, well, showing up this way and responding this way is going to work. A really great way to start doing that and observing all of those things is writing it
Mhm.
down, writing down the things that happen during your day, how you responded, what you can do differently next time. And you'll start to see the patterns and you'll start to see the ways in which you can do things better.
Mm. Journaling is something that I've struggled with for years. I've always known, I've heard, over the years that it's so important. It's so a great thing to do. But and I go out and I buy a nice, thing to write in, and I have it beside my bed, and and I do maybe 2 nights where I write a little bit, and then it just kind of like goes away. So, what's a good way to get into that and be consistent with it and to follow through?
That's a really great question. Some people might say, well, you should do it when you feel called to do it. And I would say start early. I think that's a really great tactic to utilize for anything, any new habit that we want to form in life. Start early. The way we begin our day is the way we take control of our day.
Mm.
And once you have that done early, you can check it off. And I like to do that. I like to be excited about the things that I've completed, and I feel really empowered as I move throughout my day because I'm like, okay, I did it. I checked it off. I got it done. So that's my suggestion. And baby steps, maybe challenge yourself to write a sentence, 2 sentences. I don't know. Start with baby steps and do it early.
Mhm. I love what James Clear talks about in his books, Atomic Habits,
Yes.
and how he talked about how there was a man who wanted to, go to the gym and work out, and so all he did one day was drive to the gym, and he turned around and came
Nice.
back. That
Yep.
was the first step. And the next day he
Mm-hmm.
actually went in and, you know, did some kind of a, one workout, did one thing. And then pretty soon, over the course of weeks and months, he became someone who went to the gym regularly and did the workout. But it was that baby step that got him started.
Absolutely. Not only that, but keep it to one thing you want to change.
Mhm.
Because when we put too much on our plate, we never get it done.
Yeah. So if a first responder is finding themselves in that place where they are, not such a nice human being among their friends, and maybe they're even making bad choices that are coping with the things that they are dealing with, what's a baby step that they can do to begin the healing process to get better?
Conrad, I love that. There's two I have in mind. And the first one will always be to go within, meditate, and just quiet. And you can start those with baby steps. Set an alarm for 5 minutes and just quiet yourself down. Guided meditations. I love guided meditations, and in fact, I love them so much I create them. So I'm on Insight Timer. If you're interested in listening to some of mine, you can look up April Chavez on Insight Timer. That will really start helping you learn how to go within. And you automatically, as you continue to do that more and more each and every day, you will start showing up differently. Because when we go to that place, we go into our creative space and place, and we start to be curious to create ourselves in the way that we want to, the way we want to show up in the world. And what we have going on internally reflects externally. And so that will just beautifully start to shift in life.
In your journey as a first responder, you were in an area where we talked about this a couple weeks ago when we did a kind of a pre-show conversation where you were alone a lot of times and you had to respond to places that you didn't have backup. And how did that affect you in your mindset?
Well, that I'm solely responsible for the outcomes of whatever it is, that I rely on me. When you don't have backup, you don't put anything outside of yourself, if that makes sense. And so you have to show up and respond to your ultimate best self as much as possible. And again, I mentioned you don't rise to the level of your courage, you fall to the level of your training. And so training was really, really key and important. Even if it's just, doing the movements in your mind. In fact, that's also scientifically proven that when we rehearse things, even mentally, that we do improve physically, physiologically. And so those are things that you have to have an understanding of. I have worked with other first responders that weren't able to do that couldn't show up. And so you're going to learn the people that you're able to work with and trust and rely on, and the ones that you can't. So you have to respond differently in that regard. That's getting the big picture, really knowing what you're working with, the lay of the land, all of those things. And so that's what I would say is really having that self-reliance piece to yourself.
That idea of kind of rehearsing things in your brain. I saw a video recently of the Blue Angels sitting around a conference table. These are all the pilots who fly these amazing jets, these F-18 jets, and these are the best of the best. They're the best of the best pilots. I mean, they fly at close proximity to each other. And they were literally sitting around this conference table going through the entire show in their mind.
Yes.
And they had like their hands positioned like they had them on the controls, and they had their eyes shut, and the leader would be like, okay, and now we're going to go in 3, 2, 1, turn. And they would all kind of do the thing. And they were picturing themselves in that plane, in that position, doing the show.
Yeah.
And they do that, I guess, on a regular basis. And so it works because these are the best of the best.
Yep.
And so that's something that I think that all of us could do in a way to improve. And when we're talking about taking care of ourselves, and my question earlier was about backup. And so sometimes you have backup on the job, sometimes you don't. But oftentimes, and first responders have told me, when they get home, they don't have backup when things are going south. Hey, for the past several months, I've been enjoying using the Train Well program for my daily workouts. I used to be really inconsistent with working out, and often I didn't know what to do next to achieve the results I wanted. I felt stuck. Train Well has solved that problem for me. So if you would like your own personal trainer to guide you, it's actually really easy. Visit go.trainwell.net go.trainwell.net/first responder wellness. That's go.trainwell.net/first responder wellness, and start your journey to a better you. If I can do it, I know you can too. Hey, the link is below in the show notes.
Our partners play a very big role in, our work as first responders, because they have to have that compassion, that understanding of what it is you're experiencing. And each day that I came home, I'd take a shower, because water is something that helps cleanse energetically. And in fact, that's a nice little tip for those of you who are going into a difficult situation, or your nerves are a little bit rattled. Go in the bathroom, wash your hands, just maybe even dab a little bit on your face, because it'll just kind of help reset. But not only do you feel unclean in a lot of different capacities, right? For me, as an officer, was dealing with people who said really nasty things, who spat in your face, and you're out there just navigating this different world that is not what you're used to experiencing, and so you kind of want to clean that off, you want to get rid of it. So having a partner that has an understanding that you're not going to be optimal when you get home from your shift, and to have a little grace and compassion and help them along that journey. And also to maybe understand the jokes, because there's ways that you have to get that out and express all of the things that your mind and body is trying to understand. Those are some of the things, and laughter and humor are one of those aspects that really help people along the way.
I love that idea of coming home and you're carrying all this dirt from the day, physical and metaphorical, and then taking
Yeah.
that shower to kind of, okay, now I'm clean and I'm not
Yeah.
carrying that anymore. I think that's a
Yes.
great picture of something that I think all of us can do.
It's
Um,
huge.
yeah.
And when we talk about how powerful our mind is, right? Just like, rehearsing things mentally, even if you do that mentally and rehearse it just by, taking your energy field and just refreshing it, and shaking off that, animals in nature, you'll see a dog or a deer shake, right, after they've been chased or what have you. And we don't do that. So there has to be other ways for humans to be able to do that, because otherwise we're keeping all of that energy, that negativity, those pieces within us, which eventually shows up as dis-ease.
Hmm. Wow, that's really interesting. That how animals, have that instinct to do that, to relieve
Yeah.
themselves of that stress. Really, yeah,
It's a lot we can learn from
yeah,
nature.
for sure, for sure. How important is it to have a good daily practice, like a consistent? I wouldn't say ritual, but a consistent thing that you do that gets you to where you want to go, to be healthy, to be stronger, to be better.
Well, I think it's essential in order to get to the next possible you, right? The things that we don't practice continuously, end up being the stagnated self. And so if you expect to be a different you and learn and grow, you have to put in the work to learn and grow. It also requires that action, the energy too. And so, yeah, I would say it's absolutely essential.
Something I've been thinking about lately is how the difficult things that we go through, and how it's in those difficult things that we go through that shapes who we become.
Hmm. Absolutely. When we can turn our past experiences into a different light into the lesson, the experience, it then shapes itself into wisdom. So all of the things that we consider traumatic events in life, we perceive them to be traumatic events. The reason it is a trauma is because it is something that we continue to loop inside of our mind, and we rehearse inside of our mind. What's helpful knowing that moving forward in life is when something very intense happens and you have that understanding, you can perceive it in a different light. It's like, okay, this has happened. Now what? But do not continue to rehearse it in your mind for it to get to the point of trauma, if that makes sense. Our bodies are a robot controlled by the mind. And so anything that we have going on in the mind, and also the way that we feel about it, it's that emotional response that all creates the realities that we start to experience, which then turns into our personality. Because when our body is responding on all of the things that are in our mind and all of those continuously, the looping thoughts, it becomes the personality because we're responding as such, right? And we're responding in fear or in anger or all of those things that we really don't want. So that goes back to the question of how important is it to have a continuous habit? Well, whether that's going on in your mind, rehearsing, hey, I don't want these continuous looping thoughts. And so I'm going to do my best to figure out how to stop those when they happen, cancel, or wear the rubber band. The military is really into that. And, you snap it when you have a thought that is not desirable. And, that's really it. It's continuously doing the things that will help you become a better you.
Hmm. And I love was it James Clear? I forget who it was. Well, so there's a story he writes about where there was a coach of a bicycle team in England that decided to, if they want, and they never had a championship team for 110 years. They never had a championship team, and this new coach came in 2003, and he said, "We're going to do everything we can to improve the team, but only by 1%." But 1% in every area, in everything that we need to do to ride a bicycle, to ride in a race. So it's the seat on the bike, it's the clothes that we wear, it's the food that we eat, it's the sleep, it's the it's the pedaling, practicing of riding. We're just going to improve by 1%. And if we improve the whole, all these things by 1%, it will propel us to be better. And between 2003 to 2007, they did this. And in 2007, between 2007 and 2017, they won 160 world championships, including 5 Tour de France's, all by just improving 1%.
Yeah, that's incredible. And to know that it's a journey.
Mm-hmm.
It is a journey, and it's not going to happen overnight, and we all know that, right? But it is a difficult thing to understand. I think it's especially for people going into those fields, because we have this sense of pride and this sense of wanting to control the outcome. And it's that, the surrender piece has always been the most challenging for me and for many. And I know this.
What's
but
that mean?
You
The
surrender.
piece.
Oh my gosh. Well, and it's another common word for it could be faith, right?
Mm-hmm.
But surrendering to outcomes, if you do the best that you can do and you show up to be your best self, you've done your part. And the rest is up to surrendering. That's that 1% of I'm putting in my 1% to do today, and I surrender the rest. And I put in my 1% the next day and the next day. And instead of allowing the mind to control the outcome or, expecting something to happen, it's that expectation, which is that control piece, which doesn't allow surrender to even exist. And so that's what I mean by surrender.
Wow. Well, What is a good first step for a first responder who wants to get better, who wants to live their best, to be their best self? What's a good first step in that direction?
The answer to that, and it goes similarly to having a good partner, it's surrounding yourself with people who inspire you. It and it doesn't have to be physical people. This
Mhm,
could be people, historical figures.
mhm,
This could be podcasts.
mhm,
This could be people who author books. It could be so many different things, but the people that you are inspired by, who you want to become, and the more that you engulf yourself around conversations and things and writings and you're reading and you're having conversations of and you're thinking about, wow, that's a really wonderful way to look at the world. That is what absolutely is going to change you, and there's no doubt about it.
mhm. Yeah, I've found that in my life to be true. Just the books I read. I just picked up a book yesterday that came, and it's from one of my. I've had this fascination with Mount Everest all my life, and at one point in my life, I thought, well, that would be something I would love to do, is to climb that mountain. And I've since, after seeing a couple of movies about it, I was like, maybe not. I like to live, and about there's a high percentage of people who die on Mount Everest, but Melissa Arnott Reed is one of the few women who have summited Mount Everest multiple times without supplemental oxygen. And I've been a fan of hers, I guess, for years, and just for the work that she does. And she's now semi-retired and living in someplace up in the Northwest. Um, but she wrote this book about her experiences, and I'm just diving into it. And I love finding stories like that, and people who have done
Yeah,
extraordinary things. And not that I want to climb Mount Everest without supplemental oxygen. I think that's just, for me, that's just dumb. you know, but she has inspired me to go above and beyond what I think I can do.
right. Well, we really get to embody their experiences when we listen and read their story.
Mm-hmm.
We get to go on that journey with them, alongside them. And historically, we know that, we like to put a cap on what human capability
Hmm.
is. And we just, that is again that control piece. Like, well, we know this, right? And science is such a funny thing, because there really isn't an absolute anything. And we see that more and more with quantum physics and all of the things. So we know that when somebody shows us otherwise and breaks one of the barriers, that it just opens up possibility for the next to break the next barrier and the next and the next. We think that our universe expands to just this point. We found the end of it, and then we look again, and oh my gosh, there's even more. And so it's, yes, I mean, we are so capable of miraculous things. We're so much more powerful than anyone can know. And so I think it's amazing that you continue to learn and grow from others. You do that by interviewing people on this show. I do
Hmm.
that by interviewing people on the Wellness Driven Life show. And it's incredible. And they say you are the sum of the 5 people that you surround yourself. And again, it doesn't have to be physical. And going to your vibrations and your frequencies, it will just continue to rise the more that you're in tune with those others.
Hmm. So, what would you say to that first responder who's sitting maybe in his cruiser, and it's the late shift, and he has some time to kill, so he just kind of stumbled upon this podcast? And what would you say to that person? And maybe they're struggling, maybe they're not
Hmm.
sure of who they are, what they're supposed to do. What would you say to them?
Oh, love yourself, have compassion with yourself. You're doing your best. And my husband tells me this too. Oftentimes he has to remind me, be nice to yourself, April.
Mm.
We are not nice to ourselves
Mm.
enough because we have that internal racket continuously happening, especially when so much is riding on our decisions and the way that we respond in those fields. We have a little mess up and it could be so detrimental, right? And especially if you're new, or even if you're not, like, accidents happen and you're going to mess up, and you have to know that you're going to mess up, because that's just life. And hopefully it's not, a huge mess up, but even if it is, maybe that's just the way it needed to be in order for you to show up the way that you are now. You had to have that experience, or, it was just that person's time, or this other person had to have that experience because now this is how it's going to change the course of their life. And so it's getting a bigger picture instead of, it's like you concentrate on yourself and beat yourself up instead of really understanding that there's more to this than just that.
So as we wrap up here, where can people find you? Where can they learn more about what you do?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking. drivenliving.com. Visit us at drivenliving.com. We have a free private community. That's the Drive Collective. So if you've listened this far, you might like me. You might like what I have to say. And we share so much. I also interview others. And our YouTube channel is our biggest platform. I like it the most because I love showing up not only where you can listen in, but you can watch us. You can see the people that we're interviewing, the expressions, the emotions, all the things. So the Wellness Driven Life Show on YouTube, I invite you to check us out there and follow us, subscribe, and do the same for Conrad's.
Awesome. Well, April, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for your insights and your wisdom that you shared with us. And I really appreciate that and appreciate you.
The absolute pleasure, Conrad. Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. I really appreciate April for joining me and sharing her story and insights. Hey, if this conversation resonated with you or someone you know, please share this episode and leave a review. And don't forget to check out April's community at drivenliving.com. The link is in the show notes below. Be sure to follow and subscribe as we're bringing you content like this every single week. We have more coming next week. And so when you subscribe, it automatically notifies you that we have a new episode posted. So check us out next Wednesday again. And finally, please remember that you are not alone. And if you need someone to talk to and don't know where you can turn, you can dial 988 for help. Until next time, be well, take care of yourself and those around you, and go out and do something great in the world.